Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to go on a wild ride to the outer limits. We're talking from the most waterlogged nation on Earth to the absolute loneliest spot in the ocean, and then slingshotting all the way out to the controversial edge of our solar system. Let's dive in.
So let's kick things off with a question that, honestly, sounds pretty much impossible. Can you imagine a single country so huge and so unique that it holds more lakes inside its borders than the rest of the world put together? I mean, which nation could even possibly claim that title?
The answer comes down to this one staggering number, 879,800. That is how many lakes, and we're talking about lakes larger than 25 acres, are found in just one country. And that country is Canada.
Yeah, the scale of this difference is what's truly mind-boggling. See, Canada doesn't just have the most lakes. It has an incredible 62% of all the world's large lakes. And this all goes back to the last ice age. You had these massive glaciers that just scoured and scraped the land, leaving behind millions of little depressions that, as the ice melted, filled up with water.
Okay, so from a land absolutely dominated by water, our journey now flips to the complete opposite extreme. We're heading to the very edge of dry land before we take a plunge into the most remote part of our oceans. These are the absolute boundaries of an entire continent. Think about it, from the tropical heat of Cape York in the north all the way down to the rugged, windswept Southeast Cape. These are the last little footholds of Australia. You take one step beyond any of them, and you are met with nothing but the vast, open ocean.
And speaking of the ocean, the most isolated place on Earth? Yeah, you're not going to find it on any continent. To find the real middle of nowhere, we have to leave the land far, far behind.
Welcome to Point Nemo. Now, this isn't an island or some landmark you can visit. It's a precisely calculated spot in the South Pacific that is a mind-bending 2,688 kilometers from the nearest piece of land, in any direction. It is, quite literally, the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. And to really get your head around how remote this is, think about this. When the International Space Station flies over, the astronauts orbiting 400 kilometers above the Earth are the closest human beings to anything or anyone at Point Nemo. Let that sink in for a second.
So what do you do with a place this isolated? Well, it's been given a pretty unique job. It's the world's designated spacecraft graveyard. Space agencies aim their old satellites right here, so they can crash far away from any people. Even the massive International Space Station has a date with these waters. It's scheduled for a final fiery plunge right here in 2031.
From a place filled with falling spacecraft, we now turn to a place that's defined by what's missing. Before we leave Earth entirely, let's check out one last really weird spot.
Let's talk about Iceland, a land of fire and ice, but strangely, not a land of mosquitoes. Its neighbors like Greenland and Norway are buzzing with them. So what is it about Iceland that makes it so special?
Well, it's basically a perfect storm of terrible conditions for mosquitoes. The weather is just wild. A sudden freeze can happen right in the middle of a mosquito's growth cycle, killing it off. And even if they survive that, the water is often way too cold and has the wrong chemical makeup for their larvae to develop. For a mosquito, Iceland is just impossible.
All right, time to buckle up. We are leaving Earth's atmosphere behind. Let's take a trip to our closest, most familiar celestial neighbor, a world we see almost every night, but one that could not be more different from our own. So how did we even get our moon? Well, the leading theory is called the giant impact hypothesis, and it is every bit as dramatic as it sounds. Picture this. About 4.5 billion years ago, a planet roughly the size of Mars slams into the young, molten Earth. This catastrophic impact basically vaporized the intruder and a huge chunk of our planet, blasting it all into orbit. Over millions of years, gravity did its thing and pulled this superheated ring of rock together, forming the moon we see today.
And the difference between our world and the moon is just night and day. With basically no atmosphere, there's no weather, no sound, and zero protection from the sun's harsh radiation. The temperatures swing wildly, and with just a tiny fraction of our gravity, it's a completely different physical reality. It's a static, silent world, kind of a cosmic fossil orbiting our vibrant, living planet.
For our final stop, we're traveling way out to the far, cold reaches of our solar system, to a world that sparked one of the biggest and maybe most emotional debates in modern astronomy. Let's talk about Pluto. For 76 years, Pluto was our 9th planet, simple as that. But science is always refining itself, right? First, in 1978, we found its moon, Charon, which let us figure out its mass. And oops, it was shockingly small. Then, in the 90s, we started finding a whole bunch of other objects out there in its neighborhood. The final nail in the coffin came in 2005 with the discovery of Eris, another icy world that was even more massive than Pluto. A decision had to be made.
I mean, just look at how our understanding of Pluto's size completely fell off a cliff over the decades. Early on, people thought it might be as massive as Earth. By 1978, we realized it was just a tiny fraction of that. Today, we know it's less than 0.2% of Earth's mass. This dramatic downsizing was a huge factor in what happened next.
So in 2006, the International Astronomical Union laid down 3 rules for what makes a planet. Pluto checks the first 2 boxes. It orbits the sun, and it's big enough that gravity pulled it into a round shape. But it fails on that third and most controversial rule. It hasn't cleared its neighborhood. Think of a real planet as a gravitational bully that's either gobbled up or kicked out all the other junk in its orbit. Pluto hasn't done that. It just shares its space with countless other icy objects out in the Kuiper Belt.
But, and this is a big but, the story doesn't end there. A lot of scientists, like Alan Stern, who led the mission that flew past Pluto, completely disagree with that definition. His point is, hey, a chihuahua is still a dog, right? So a dwarf planet should still be a type of planet. The debate is very, very much alive.
Ultimately, Pluto's whole saga is just a perfect example of science in action. It shows us that our understanding is always changing as we get new information, and it leaves us with a really fascinating question. What discovery is waiting just around the corner that's going to force us to redraw our cosmic map all over again?